So I'm focusing right now on the yoga asanas. And there's a difference between doing the pose and feeling the pose. And this is how I equate it to life too. We can go through life and we can do everything we do, kind of plod through, routine, or we can feel the entirety of the day, all the movements we do. That's asking a lot, and I understand that in the human skin, because it's hard. You have to be intentional and in the moment. But what it keeps coming around to for me is that moment, this moment here is really all we have. And I used to be like, what the fuck does that mean? And now it took me all these years to figure out, and not just intellectually figure it out, but really feel it. I see. So when I wake up in the morning, I try and take that notion of this is the day I have in front of me. I don't think second by second, but I think this is the day in front of me. And I equate that with the yoga asanas, which are the yoga poses. Doing a pose is one thing, and being like, okay, now I'm in warrior two. And then feeling the wide angle stance, the rotating of the foot and the hip, the raising of the arms, keeping the chest open, rolling those shoulders back, then maybe bringing those hands down to the earth, bending into that front knee and looking over the front fingers. So, doing a pose and feeling the pose are not necessarily the same thing. There are intended lines of energy for poses, for each pose. So if you look at where you're at and the full expression of the pose, which is in an ideal world, if you were going to do the pose perfectly, what would it look like? And we're all on varying points in that spectrum, because depending on how long we've practiced and our mobility issues or whatever. So we have that's why I like alignment-based yoga a lot of the time, or at least the basics, because if you get the alignment right, you're not going to have deviations from those intended lines of energy. And I'm going to take as an example, if you do Warrior 2 or Virabhadrasana 2, and as I was saying, you turn that foot, remember foot, knee, and hip are always in one line. So if you're bending that knee, it's got to track right over the foot. If you're bending that knee inward and letting it collapse inward, which is more often the case, or deviation outward, which I don't see as much, but that inward rotation correlates to the tightness in the hip musculature. So if that knee is being pulled inward, if your knee is being pulled inward, you probably have some tightness in your hips. And what will happen is a slow movement towards that perfect alignment, that intended alignment, will open up and stretch the area in the hip. So that will loosen the hip. And then as your pose evolves on the mat, you will be able to have a stronger Virabhadrasana 2 with proper alignment, stretching what needs to be stretched, engaging what needs to be engaged, and then you will feel the difference, right? So we can visually see it, and that's not wrong, but we have to feel it. We have to understand why the alignment is important. I see sometimes, and I experience myself sometimes, I do this, a laziness in my pose. I'm just doing the pose, I'm getting there, I'm like, but the reality is, that happens less and less now, especially teaching, because I have to be very focused. But when I'm off on my own doing a series, I might be like, oh, I'm here, all right, I'm doing Warrior 2, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to cook for dinner or whatever it is. So to be there, you really have to be there. And that alignment is going to be a great reflection of that, because that takes a lot of focus. If your knee tends to drift inward, It's going to take a lot of intention and focus for you to maintain that alignment. Okay? So that is the difference with doing a pose and feeling a